Testing audio 1 2 3. Testing audio 1 2 3. Right now my mouse is on the home link. Now it's on admissions. Now it's on academics. Testing. Hello everyone, this is Fahad from PCR Educator. Thank you for joining me today. In this webinar, I'm going to go through some of the steps to configure your teacher portal, as well as highlight some of the new features in the teacher portal. Your school may already be using some of these features, but there may be other features that you may find beneficial. So feel free to connect with us and we can help you implement them. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions related to this webinar or future webinars, feel free to email them to support@pcreducator.com. And when it comes to configuring the CMS portals, you'd want to make sure that you have website full and security full roles to properly configure the front end and the back end side of it. So this webinar will have some things from the teacher's perspective, and there will be some things also from the administrator's point of view. And I'll be covering things such as attendance. I'll go through Gradebook, entering reported grades, and one of the new features that we had released was integration with Google Classroom. So I'm actually gonna go through that as well. And then later we'll look at how to send emails, how to create purchase orders, and send students to the nurse's office. So let's go ahead and get started. Currently, I'm logged in as a sample teacher, and this is the home page of the teacher portal, and you can see a snapshot on my dashboard side. There's a schedule widget, there's period attendance widget, missing grades, Dropbox information like which assignments have not yet been processed. And then if I scroll further down, I can see students who may have signed up for parent-teacher conferences. I can see my lunch balance. So if you're using our cafeteria module, you can allow teachers to upload funds to their lunch account so that when they purchase lunch, they can use those funds for their lunch. And then on the left hand side, I have purchase orders. So I'm going to go in details about how purchase orders work from the teacher's perspective a little bit later in the webinar. But this is a basic snapshot of the teacher's homepage. And all of this is customizable. So if there's some widgets that you may want to add, you can add them. Or if there are other widgets that you may not want to add, you can remove them from your existing portals as well. So when I look at my home dashboard, I see that the schedule widget doesn't show my classes today. And when I switch over to the period attendance screen, I see that I'm not able to take attendance. So whenever the school year begins, oftentimes teachers experience this because they're not able to take attendance for their classes, or maybe for some of their classes, or maybe it could be that only new teachers cannot take attendance. So let's go through some of the items that you'd want to make sure are configured properly in your system so that teachers are able to see their daily schedule and also take attendance. So what we're going to first check for is when we go to the administrative module. So now I'm switching to the administrative module through the back end. And I've gone to security and users, and I've pulled up the teacher's user account that I'm currently logged in as in the teacher portal. So the first thing you may want to check is that when you look at the teacher's account, you'd first want to make sure that the teacher's user account is tied to the teacher record. The next thing you'd want to check is that on the left hand side it says schools. Make sure that the teacher is assigned to the same division that the teacher has classes in. So when I click on the schools tab, I see that this teacher is assigned to upper school and middle school divisions because this teacher has classes in both divisions. So you'd want to make sure that your user account for the teacher is correct. Typically, especially if you have new teachers who can't take attendance, this is most likely the reason why. The next thing that you should check for is to make sure that you have blocks and period codes in your system. So if you go to scheduling blocks, make sure that you have blocks in your division. And then if you go to period codes, make sure that you have period codes. And these period codes should be assigned to blocks on different, or at least on one day. So I have day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and then my period occurs on certain times on each day. So you'd want to make sure that your period codes are configured and your blocks are configured. So in this example, my day 1 is a Monday schedule, day 2 is a Tuesday schedule, and so forth. The next thing that you'd want to check for is if you go to courses and sections, make sure that your classes have period codes assigned to them. So I can see that most of my classes do have period codes assigned to them, and make sure that your classes actually have students enrolled in them. So many times schools forget to enroll students, so teachers can't see students when they take attendance. So in my example, I do have students enrolled in most of my classes, so I'm fine with that. The next thing you would check for is under blocks, go to daily rotation, and make sure that the session or today is in session so that attendance can be taken. So if I pull up my daily rotation screen, today is the 29th, so I can see that on the 29th, day 4, which was a Thursday, is in session. So if this was cleared out, it would be one of the reasons that a teacher may not be able to take attendance. And then the last thing to check would be your marking period info, which resides under admin, maintenance, marking period info. So in this example scenario, I'm in the 4th quarter and I see that my attendance dates closed on 6/30/2021, which would be the reason that I can't take attendance today. So I'm going to open it until 8/1/2021 and hit save. So I go back to my teacher portal just to make sure I clear everything or clear the cache. I'll just go ahead and re-log in. And when I re-log in as the same teacher, now I can actually see that my classes are populating. And if I come here and refresh the attendance screen, I can also see that my attendance screen is populating. So in my example, I had everything configured except for my marking period info. Attendance dates were closed, which is why I wasn't able to see my daily schedule or take attendance. So let's go ahead and take attendance. So there are different ways that you can access the attendance screen. It also depends if you're taking daily attendance or period attendance. It could depend on how your school is configured. But an easy way to take attendance is simply click on the link to any class from your schedule. And here you would be able to see the list of students, and you can mark them either absent or late and so forth. And then you can hit save, and attendance would be recorded in the system. So if you have taken attendance, you'll see that it'll show a message that says attendance has been taken. You can also take attendance from your iPhone or tablet. So I actually created a quick video that shows how you can do that. So in this video, I recorded this on my iPhone. So I added an attendance icon here. So if I play the video, what the teachers can do is they can click on the attendance icon and it'll pull up the attendance screen, and it'll automatically know which class is in session based on the current time, and it'll automatically recognize whichever marking period is in session. So when we look at this screen, there are different things I want to show you. So this is again from an iPhone view. So here I see my list of students and I see what time they checked in today. So this person checked in at 8 a.m. This one checked in at 8:03, 7:55. And then I can also see which students are day, boarding, or virtual. So in my example, the virtual student didn't need to check in the school. That's why there is no check-in time. And then this other student, Corinne, she's absent today. So I could simply go ahead and mark her as absent for the day. And then I would be able to just save attendance. So this could be done through your tablet or through your phone. So next, let's move on to the next topic, which is the gradebook. So I'll go through how to configure the gradebook, how to create assignments, and so forth. So to start off, we're going to go to class and then click on gradebook configuration. So the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that your gradebook is configured. So when you're on this screen, you'll see different widgets. So one of these widgets is called preferences. Then you also have an option to add new categories. Now the preferences widget is associated with each class. So when you switch to different classes, you could have different settings for each class. So when you're setting up these preferences, you'd want to make sure that you switch between each classes and make sure that you've correctly saved these settings. For example, let's say that one of your sections does category weight but another one does not. You would check off category weight for one section, save it, switch to the next section, and uncheck category weights. Category weights, they're used, so if you have different categories such as homework and tests or quizzes and so forth, you can weigh categories differently so that when the average is calculated, different categories could be, some could be worth more, some could be worth less. So if you do want to do that, you would select or check off category weight. Then there's assessment weight. What that is, when you're creating an individual assignment, you can also put weighting on individual assignments. So you can use that in conjunction with category weighting, or you can use it by itself. So if you don't use it with the category weighting, then any assignment that you create, you can assign weights, and then whichever assignments have higher weights, they would be worth more. And if you were to use the category weight and assignment weight in conjunction, then you could weight assignments and they would be weighted within that particular category. So some could be worth more than the others. And then that category would be weighted on its own, and that category could be worth more than other categories or less than other categories. So you could do both category and assessment weighting. And if you uncheck both of them, then the gradebook would calculate based on just straight up based on points for each assessment. So if you have 10 assessments and some are some have are graded on more points than others, and they would make a greater impact on your gradebook average. High gradebook reporting. This is so that, let's say you're working on a gradebook and you're entering assignment grades, but you don't want parents or students to see them on their portal. You can simply check this and it'll hide the grades for this particular class. Whichever class is selected, it'll hide the gradebook grades for that class from the parents and the students. And then there's lowest grade calculation, and there are a few options. So there's lowest score, and then there's greatest impact, or you can just set it to none. It basically means that it'll highlight the lowest grade. either based on just the score, like a percentage score, or based on whichever assignment makes the greatest impact on the student's grade. So it'll highlight it, and if you wish to drop it, you can drop that grade. So once you have configured your preferences, the next step would be to create an assignment. To create a category. And before I do that, there's one other thing I want to mention. When a teacher sets up preferences, and if there are reported grades in the system, such as report card grades or progress report grades, then these settings will be disabled, so they'll be grayed out. So for example, if I switch to calculus, you can see that I'm not able to check category or assessment weighting because I have saved report card grades for calculus. But there is a way to override it. So if a teacher reaches out to you as an administrator, and let's say that the teacher had used a particular weight for semester 1 and they want to switch to another weight for semester 2, or they want to turn off or turn on category weights for semester 2. What you can do as an administrator is you can actually go to the administrative portal and then go to sections, and then you can go to details of the particular section, and you can enter allow weight calculations override until a particular date, and teachers would be able to update their preferences and change weighting until the date that you have specified. Just keep in mind that if there are report cards saved, grades saved from previous terms or from earlier, they won't be affected after a teacher changes weighting or enables or disables different preferences. Previous grades won't be affected. So another thing is you can possibly add this widget directly on the gradebook screen itself, so that when teachers are entering grades, they'll be able to see exactly what their settings are for that particular class. And when I switch over to my gradebook, you'll see that I have this preferences widget on that particular screen as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new category. So under add new category, you can go ahead and create a new category. So I'll just call it classwork, and then pick a type. I'm going to cover what a type means once we're creating an assessment. So I'm just going to go ahead and click add. Once I hit add, it creates a new category. So here it created a category called classwork, and then I can hit edit, and I can check off whichever classes I want this category to be applicable to. So I'm just going to select algebra 2 trig for now, and I can put in a weight. When it comes to weighting, our system basically automatically calculates a weight out of 100%. So if you're using weights that are, let's say, 10, 20, 30, or you're using weights that are such as like 0.5, 0.1, 0.2, just stay consistent, because based on these weightings, different categories would be will have different impact. So our system will take whatever weights you specify and then make it so that it's graded out of 100, or is weighted out of 100%. So I'm going to go ahead and hit update, and that'll basically, I've now created my category, and I've added weight to my new category, and I've assigned it to my algebra 2 trig class. The next step would be to create an assignment. So I just go to the assessment screen, and I hit new. And here I can create an assignment. So I pick my new category called classwork. And I can put in a new assignment. So I'll just call it homework 1. End date means when the assignment is due. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick tomorrow. Visible online means when should this assignment show up on the calendar, like from the parent's perspective or the student's perspective. This is a date that this assignment will show up on their end. So if you're creating assignments in advance and you don't want them to show up until the future, you can set the visible date to be in the future. Then there's show in gradebook. What this means is that is this assignment going to be graded or not? There may be some assignments that you still want parents and students to see, but they won't be graded, such as like telling them to read a particular chapter of a book. You may still want that to be an assignment, but it may not be a graded assignment. So in that case, you may uncheck show in gradebook. Enable Dropbox would allow students to be able to electronically submit assignments through the student portal. And then at the bottom here, you can specify which classes you may want to apply this assignment to. So if you have multiple sections of the same class and they get the same assignment, you can just check off multiple classes. And if any of these classes have different due dates or different visible dates or different numbers of points, you can overwrite them. Otherwise, the system will use whatever the defaults are at the top. Then here at the bottom, you can provide a longer description of the assignment. You can also attach files that the students would be able to access. And then once the assignment is created, you can just hit save and it'll save the assignment in the system. So once the assignment is created, the next step would be to go ahead and enter grades. So if I go to Gradebook Entry, here you can see that widget that I was talking about earlier. So I've added this so I would never forget what my settings are for a particular class. So when I go to my gradebook, based on how the mark types are configured, it'll calculate different grades such as a final grade or a semester grade based on my gradebook assignment grades. So these are right now, it says group by category. So you could group by category or you could group assignments by date. So because I'm grouping by category, it shows my homework one here and then my classwork category and then my other assignments and their categories and so forth. So then in order to enter a grade, you just simply go ahead and put in whatever grade that you want to put in for the assignment. Now there are different features on this screen that you can play around with. For example, here it says enter value show category as percent. So I enter the value for the homework grade and my category is showing as a percentage. I can switch to different options, like I could directly enter a percent instead of a number, like instead of just straight up points. So for example, let's say that I'm grading something out of 30 instead of out of 100. I can put in, if it's set to percent, I can put in 90% and it'll determine how many ever points those are to get to 90%. Then on this same screen, there are different features here. So you can switch X and Y axis. This will show your assignments on the left hand side and your students on the right hand or on the top. And then another option is there's this little arrow that lets you sort the record. So you can sort students or you can sort assignments based on points, or you can sort students based on their last names. And then there's also an option here on the right that lets you export the gradebook if you need to. Moreover, if you click on these links at the top for each assignment, you can use find replace. So let's say that you have a particular assignment where most of the students will receive 100. You can start off by giving everyone 100 using find replace, and then you can just go to individual students and change their grades if they did not receive 100. So it kind of makes it faster for you to enter grades. And then there's this arrow that's pointing to the top right. If you click on it, it opens up a blank or a screen that doesn't have a logo and left menus and so forth. So it gives you more real estate for your gradebook. That way you don't have to scroll much. You can kind of see most of the information quickly in one screen. So that was basically the gradebook functionality. So now I'm actually gonna go through the Google Classroom functionality. So Google Classroom integration allows administrators to push or pull data, facilitating data exchange between PCR Educator and Google. It also helps students and teachers organize assignments, boost collaboration, and foster better communication while reaping the benefits of our integrated school CRM system. And the integration will save teachers a lot of time re-entering the same information in multiple places. So for the Google Classroom aspect, I'm actually going to use a different teacher to make things more simple. And we'll go through the steps. So once Google Classroom has been configured, we'll go through the steps like how to push classes to Google Classroom. Then when categories are created in PCR, how to push the categories to Google Classroom, how to enter grades, how to create assignments in Google Classroom and then push them to PCR, and how to push grades that you enter in Google Classroom to PCR. So let's just get started on that. I'm gonna go ahead and log out from here, and then I'm gonna be logging in as a different teacher shortly. And I'm gonna go to my Google Classroom as a teacher. So right now, when I go to my Google Classroom, I don't have any classes or any students or any grades or anything like that. So when I go to the administrative portal as an administrator, and let me make sure that I'm in the right division. So basically, you would go to admin, maintenance, Google Classroom screen to get to the screen that I'm on right now, and it'll let you sync course sections and students and assessments and so forth. So right now I have I'm just gonna be using this one class for this purpose. So I've created a science class, and this science class just has one student in it. So we're just gonna be using this for the sake of showing how Google Classroom integration works. So when you're on this particular screen, you would go ahead and start off by clicking Upload Missing Course Sections button. And just to be clear, this process of syncing classes and students and assessments and grades and everything, this would be done automatically on a daily basis. But if you wish to push certain things yourself anytime during the day, this would be the place to do it. So I'm basically doing it manually, but just keep in mind that there is an automatic process where all of these would happen automatically daily. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Upload Missing Course Sections. And once it's done, I'll see a message to show that my classes have been uploaded. So I've gone ahead and pressed Upload Missing Course Section. So here you can see that new Google course created, my Science Section 2 Term 1 and my Science Section 2 Term 2. So in Google Classroom, it takes each term and it creates a separate class for them. Then there are other messages here. So if you have some classes in Google Classroom but you don't have matching classes in PCR, you may get other messages to kind of show you what to fix. But right now we're just focused on Science Section 2 Term 2. So when I go back as a teacher to my classes, my Google class, and I refresh, you can see that these two classes now show up. My Term 1 and Term 2 both show up. For the sake of keeping things simple, I'm only going to focus on term 2 in this particular scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and click accept. The next thing, when I go to people, I see that I don't have any students here, but I do have students. I do have one student in my section in PCR. So I go back to my Google Classroom screen, and I go ahead and click Sync Students. So once the student is synced, I should see a message here. So let's wait for that. So here you can see student added to course. It tells me which student was added, and it tells me which class the student was added to. So if I go back to my Google class, I can see that the student Parker was added to my class. Now the next thing would be to set up categories in my teacher portal so that when I create assignments in Google Classroom, my assignments can go over to PCR's teacher portal. So now what I'm doing is I'm logging in as a different teacher into my PCR teacher portal so that I can show you my categories. So I'm going to go ahead and go to class, and then I'll go ahead and click on Gradebook configuration. So if I scroll down, I created two categories. One is classwork and one is other. For classwork, I associated with a type of evaluation, and then other I did not associate with anything. So you can only add assignments, or you can only sync assignments and categories, or you can only sync assignments to categories that have a default type set to something. If it's blank, then it won't sync with Google Classroom. So I have just one category that I'll be using for this purpose. And earlier I had mentioned that I would talk a little bit more about what an assessment type means. So besides being able to use the default type to connect it with Google Classroom, a type would also allow you to restrict how many certain assignments can be given by teachers for that type in a certain time period. So for example, let's say that you don't want any student to have more than 2 or 3 tests per week. You can set through the backend side, you can set in the system that no student can have more than 3 tests, and a test would be a type, so that when teachers are creating an assignment with the type of test, and a student already has maximum numbers for that week, it'll show a message to the teacher to let them know that you have certain students that already meet the maximum number of that particular assignment of that particular type, so that the teacher can move it maybe to the next week or to a future date. Alright, so I've created my categories here. I've made one of them have a type. So the next thing would be for me to go to Google Classroom and enter an assignment through Google Classroom. So I go back to Google Classroom, and actually before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and click Sync Categories as well, because I've already created one category. So when you have one category, it'll say skip category syncing. All Google Class work is mapped to a single category type in PCR. So because I only have just a single valid category, any assignment that I create in Google Classroom will be associated with that just one category. But if I had multiple categories, then I would be able to move those categories to Google Classroom, and when I create an assignment, I would specify which category or which topic that assignment should be associated with. So I go back to my Google Classroom, I hit classwork, and I'm gonna go ahead and click create assignment, and then I'll just create a new assignment. And then I can put in the number of points here. So let's say that this time I'll make it out of 75 points. Then I can specify a due date. So I'll make it like tomorrow. Now in this case, as I mentioned, because there is only one category, I don't need to specify any topic. But if I had synced multiple categories, I would see those categories here, and I could select one of those categories. So once I set up my assignment, I can go ahead and click assign. So now I've created homework 1. I'm going to go back to my Google Classroom screen, and actually before I do that, let me even go to my teacher portal. So right now when I go to my teacher portal and I click on assessments, I see that I don't have any assessments in my PCR teacher portal. So I'm going to go ahead and sync assessments next. Now when I sync assessment, it says assessment added to PCR. So if I go back to my teacher portal and click assessments, I see that homework 1 now shows up for my science class, and it shows the due date and it shows the number of points. When I go to Gradebook, I would see my assignment, but there's no grade here for Parker. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Google Classroom, put in a grade for Parker, and then we'll sync the grade to PCR. So I open up homework, I put in a grade. Let's say I put in 74, and then I'll hit return. So once I have put in a grade, I can go back and I can hit sync grades. So here it says Mark was saved in PCR Educator. So when I go back to my gradebook screen, and if I just refresh the page, you can see that the grade now shows up, and it's calculated, and it calculates the final grade based on my assignment grade. So this is how the integration piece would work. And then if I look at things from the parent's perspective, so now I'm actually in the parent portal. And in the parent portal, if I pick my student Parker, I can see that my science class shows up under student gradebook, and then it shows me the average. So this is all connected together. And if I had not yet put in the grade, I would also see my assignment under the assignments due widget. But since it's graded, it doesn't show here, but it does show here under the student gradebook widget. So everything is connected together when you use Google Classroom. So that covers the Google Classroom part. So the next part that I'm going to cover is the class page within the PCR's teacher portal. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my first teacher that I was using, and we'll go through how the class page works. Alright, so now I'm logged in as that same teacher that I was logged in as earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and click class. So similar to Google Classroom, teachers can also set up class pages in the PCR teacher portal. So class pages make it extremely easy to share information about each class to parents and students. Such information may include class description. It may include different kinds of blog posts. It may include image galleries, videos, and more. Not only that, but as a teacher, you would be able to control what you want to share with your students and your parents, because when a parent and the student log in, they also have a class page on their end. And based on what you share with them, they would see those the widgets that you have enabled in their portal. So I'm going to go through how to manage these widgets in a little bit, or how to show and hide from different portals. So if you're looking to update something in a particular widget, so let's say that if I wanted to update a description, I can simply click Manage, and I can update the description and then hit Save and hit View, and then the description would be updated and it would be visible to my parents and students if this widget is made visible to those portals. Similarly, I can update other things too. So here I have a downloads widget, so I could click Manage and I can modify this information as well. I can also add blog posts by clicking Manage. I can put in the date of the blog post. If I want to link it to a particular page or a video, I can do that. I can add images for each blog post and much more. And then I can add videos and image galleries and so forth as well. So if there's a particular widget that you would like to set up, you could, as a teacher, you can request your administrators to set that up. But the description, downloads, these are all customized. So in your case, it could be syllabus instead of description, or it could be class description, or any other widget that you would want teachers to populate. You can add a widget and it'll allow teachers to populate that widget and share that information with students and with parents. So now, in order to show and hide certain widgets, you would go to Class Page Management. So first thing you need to make sure is that you have created a class page for the classes that you do want to set up a class page for. So here you can see I have one for algebra, geometry, and calculus, but I don't need one for advisory, so I haven't created one, and I haven't yet created one for English. But the first step would be to create a class page, and you just simply check off the class and hit create, and it'll create a class page. Then let's say that you want to show and hide certain widgets either from your own teacher portal, or from the parent portal, or from the student portal. You simply check or uncheck certain widgets. So let's say that you're working on a description but you want to hide it from the parents but not from the students. You can uncheck parent and keep student checked and save it, and then the description would only show up on your end in your staff portal, and it'll show up on the student portal but not on the parent portal. So that's how you can easily manage class pages. The next topic I'll cover is the report card entry. So once the gradebook grades have been entered, and you're trying to enter final grades for the report card, how do you actually do that? So there are different ways or different interfaces that you can enter report card grades through. So I'm going to start by report card marks page on the left hand side. So this is a good page to enter grades if you want to enter them quickly. So especially if you have certain grades that you just want to review and save. So like in my example, my quarter grade is automatically being calculated from my gradebook, and then I could manually enter an exam grade because it's not being calculated from anywhere. And then my semester and final grades, they're being calculated based on other grades that I have entered. So this is a quick way for you to check your grades that will be going in the report card. And if the grades are bolded, that means that they have been saved. If they're not bolded, that means that they have not yet been saved. So you can see that this A is not bolded, but the other ones are bolded. So this one hasn't yet been saved. If I want to save it, I can hit save at the bottom, or I can hit save on the right hand side. and it'll save my grade, or I could even pick one from the drop down and it'll automatically save it at that point. If I want to unsave a particular grade or a particular column, I can actually go in and select star star, and it'll basically unsave the grade. So if I go ahead and refresh, um, sorry, it's the wrong page. So if I go back to so you can now see that this grade is not saved anymore. And then let's say that I want to recalculate the grade. So in some cases, you'll see that your grades are purple. What that means is that you had your report card grade saved, but then you may have entered another assignment or changed a grade from an assignment, so that your current gradebook average may be different than, or your quarter average based on the current gradebook grade may be different than what it is saved, how it was, or at the time that it was saved. So if you want to recalculate it, you can just hit the calculate button and it'll recalculate the grades for you based on any changes you made. So yeah, before your reports are finalized, just make sure to review this page. If you see any purple grades, make sure that those are intentional, because there may be cases where you override certain grades. But otherwise, if you see purple grades, you can hit calculate. The system will recalculate them for you. And if you see any grades that are not saved, you can hit save and the system will save them for you. So this is one way to record grades. Another way is if I go to report card comments. This will be useful if you are not only reviewing grades but also entering comments. So if I go ahead and click not reviewed here for Greg Delareggi, and the not reviewed refers to the status of my comment. So whenever I put in a grade and then I can write a comment, I can actually submit the comment for my administrators to review. So in PCR, there's a whole review process, and that review process can be done based on different levels. So like if you have a first level where an administrator reviews your comments, then when the administrator may review your comment, they may mark it with the status of administrator reviewed. And once that has been, once someone has reviewed your comment and changed the status, you won't be able to edit your comment anymore unless the status is changed back to like return to teacher. And then if the administrator returns it back to you, they can also provide feedback, which you would be able to see here as a teacher. And then once the comment has been accepted by the highest level of reviewers, such as perhaps in your case, department chair has to be the last one to review. When that last person reviews the comment, it'll be marked as accepted, that the comment is good, and then your school may run report cards so that these comments are printed on the report cards. Then here you'll see a couple of drop downs. So these are bank comments which administrators can set up. Bank comments are pre-saved comments that teachers can use so that they don't have to type the same thing over and over. So like I have different categories: grade, good, mediocre, and within each category I have different comments like eager to learn, enthusiastic. So if I just pick one, you can see that it puts in that comment. So Greg is a classroom leader. He's always willing to help out other classmates when needed. So you can set up what those comments are. That way you don't have to manually enter the same comments every time if you have certain comments that you often use. So from this screen you can review comments. You can switch to different students from here. You can click save and next. And our system also auto saves comment about every 10 seconds or so, if the setting is set to save automatically. And then from here you can review your grades. You can make sure everything looks good, so that when reports are printed, it'll show the grades that have been saved and the comments that have been saved. All right, so the next, we just have a few more things left. So the next item that I'll go over are purchase orders. So earlier I kind of touched on them very briefly. So imagine that a teacher wants to order supplies for their class. Instead of having to manually reach out to business office or send back and forth emails, the teacher can actually use their portal to request a purchase order. This will automatically alert the business office and allow the budget manager to approve the order, and then the business office can process the order. And once the teacher receives the order, they can mark it as received, which would again alert the business office so that they can complete the purchase order. So when I go to the staff home page, I can see existing purchase orders, whether they have been received or submitted for approval or still pending. Pending means that I'm still working on them. So there are different statuses. So if I want to request a purchase order, I click request purchase order. And then here I can pick the vendor. So I want to order from Amazon.com. And I can select what I want to order. So let's say that I pick markers, and I want to, each one costs $18.50, kind of expensive. And then if I want to buy 10 of them, I can select 10, or I can put in 10 in the quantity. Then let's say that I also want to buy paper. I'll go ahead and pick paper from here, and let's say I want to buy like 20 different stacks of papers. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit 20 or type in 20. If I, as a teacher, want to add any notes for specific items, I can go ahead and put the notes here. So you can say like on Amazon.com search for Crayola, something like that. And then I can also put in a description of my purchase order, so markers and paper. If I want to share some sort of a file with my business office, I can attach a file. So let's say that you were ordering something and you already got the quote for that order. You can attach a file so that you can share that file with your business office. So if you want to just work on the purchase order, if you're not finished, you can just hit save. But if you want to submit it to your business office for approval, you can click save and submit for approval. And when you do that, your business office gets notified, the budget manager gets notified, so then they can review the purchase order and either accept it or decline it. So once your purchase order has been received, you can mark that it has been received so that the business office can close the purchase order. So you can search based on the status. So if I just look for any status called accepted, I have one called graduation. So if I go to details, I had ordered 10 graduation gift bags. So if I received them, I can put in the number of quantity that I received, and I can hit update received, so that the business office is notified that this item has been received, and then they can process the purchase order. So that's kind of the basic functionality of how purchase orders work from the teacher's perspective. The next thing I'll go over is how to send emails, meaning communicate with parents and students through the teacher portal. So let's go to students at the top. And I can search based on different classes. So by default, it's selected my algebra class. So these are the students in that class. I also want to point out that when you're looking at your teacher portal, you may see stars next to certain students. What that means is that they have health alerts. It's just to keep you posted on them. So if you wanted to see, like for example, Greg has a star next to his name. So if I wanted to see what health alerts Greg has, I can just click his name, and under this health widget, I can see that this person has like he's allergic to cats. He's allergic to different severe nut allergy, and so forth. So you can click on the name and see what this person, what kind of alert this student has. So getting back to email, you can either search based on different classes to find students that belong to different classes, and you can select them and go to multi-action. You can either just email students or you can email parents and students. So when I go here, one thing you'll notice right away, and this is a new feature, is that you can set up signatures beforehand so that when you're sending out emails, you don't have to recreate your signature every time. You can possibly add your school's logo and things like that, so you're not having to redo the same thing over and over. So I have my signature here, and then if I want to set up an email, this is a pretty straightforward process. So I can say like exam tomorrow, and I can say like hi. And then under add fields, you can actually add custom fields. So if I wanted to put in the student's name in here, I could put in the student's name, or I can put in parent information or whatnot. So I'm just going to do student name. You can put these fields in the body. You can also put these fields in the subject. So if you wanted to say exam tomorrow and then put in the student's name or something in the subject, you can do that. As a teacher, you probably wouldn't put in these fields in the sender information because you would have your own information there. But anyway, so I'll go ahead and click body. So it puts in this field in the body, and then I can say we have an exam tomorrow. Please bring your number 2 pencils. So when I set up an email, I can go ahead and click email preview to see what the email will look like before it's sent. So it converts the name. So hi Greg, hi Parker, hi Tim. You'll notice that Parker shows up a few times is because Parker has multiple families. So if I'm sending out an email to different families, it may show up different multiple times. Then I have Tim and so forth. So once the email is set up, then you have the option to either send it right away, or you can also schedule it to go out in the future. You can put in a date, and then you can put in a time. So you can either pick a time, or you can also manually modify the time. And then if you want to click on test, it'll send out an email to yourself so you can see the formatting of the email before you send it to others. And then so once you have your email set up, you can send it or schedule it or whatnot. And to set up the signature that I was talking about earlier, you basically set up you put in your signature in this box here, and then you save your template. So you can give it a name. So I gave it a signature as the template name, and then you pick that template, you load it, and then just click make default. So what it'll do is whenever you open up an email, it'll load that signature template as your default template. So it'll load that signature, which will be part of the template. So once you have sent out the emails, you can actually see under email history. So if you go to staff home, click email history, you can see which emails you may have sent out in the past, what those emails were. You can see by clicking on view, and you can also see who the recipients were and whether or not they had actually opened up the email. If you have scheduled emails that are going out in the future, you can also review them, or you can delete them if you don't want to, or if you want to cancel those emails. The last thing I'll show you quickly is how to release students to the nurse's office. So teachers can release students to the nurse's office directly through the teacher portal, which will alert the nurse so that the nurse knows to expect the student in their office. This will help prevent students from going elsewhere, as they will know that the nurse will expect them to see in her office soon. So if I go to students, And let's say I want to release Greg to the nurse's office. I can click Greg's name, and I'll hit health visits here. Let's say that uh, Greg has a flu or cold or maybe a headache or fever or something like that. I can pick any of these options, and these are customizable, so you can have other options as well. And then I can put in a comment that I may want the nurse to see, so I can say like not feeling well. And this information can also be shared through the parent portal, so parents can also see that their child went to the nurse's office. So I can hit save, and it redirects me to here, so I can see the current visit has been recorded. It tells me who it was recorded by and the time. At this point, the nurse would get a notification. Then the nurse would put in more information, like what what kind of medication was given to Greg, whether the parent was notified, and so forth. That would all be done through the health portal that the nurse would have access to. So this wraps up our webinar for today. Please reach out to support@pcreducator.com if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions related to this webinar. We are also having a limited time promotion where we can actually create training videos and documentation that will be customized to your school's teacher portal. So if you're interested in that, email support@pcreducator.com and we can provide you with more information. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out.